Welcome once again to Castrol Active Champions, and the player we are featuring today is a champion in every sense of the word. As a player, as a team man, as a fighter, as a leader, and dare I say, he's a personal favorite of mine as well. I enjoyed watching Anil Kumble play, and there's so many stories around him that just reflect the kind of person he was. Throughout his career, there was rarely a phase when Kumble was underperforming, and yet the stories that you remember the most are in that period, in the late 90s, early 2000s. We talk about it as the period when the Fab Five were batting very well. It'll be interesting to see how many of those games the bowlers actually won you. And I'm going to look at one of those games. It wasn't a game that the bowlers actually won, but it told you everything about Anil Kumble, the person. This was back in Antigua in 2002 on one of the most terrible test match wickets you will see. Terrible because the ball hit the deck and then just enjoyed itself. It was lazy, it didn't want to go anywhere, and the batsmen could do just as they pleased. Mervyn Dillon bowled a bouncer, it broke Anil Kumble's jaw, and we thought, right, there we go, this is going to be a draw. And then late that evening, suddenly we saw Anil Kumble came out to bowl, and we said, oops, what's happening? Producer, I'm on commentary, producer says out. You know, when you're the junior most, you're the reporter around. Out, he said, you go down to the boundary and let's interview the physio because he's putting that bandage up. All the physio told Anil Kumble was, do what you want. I've taped it so tight, the bone won't move because the bone was cracked edge to edge. Don't appeal, he said, but you can't tell that to Anil Kumble. Every time Kumble appealed, he'd have to put another layer of bandage on. Kumble got the wicket of Brian Lara, should have got the wicket of Carl Hooper. When I asked him afterwards, why did you come out to bowl? He said, our batsmen never give us 500 runs in the bank when we're playing overseas. I thought in those 13, 14 overs that were left, if I got a couple of wickets, then maybe it would open the door, maybe India would win. If there was an opportunity, Anil Kumble was there, and that's why I thought that day he protected that ethos around the Indian team. Much like Castrol Active Actibonds protect your bike engine, whether it's running or off. The highest point of Kumble's career, of course, was that test match in Delhi. For some reason, Anil Kumble and Delhi had a love affair. It was where his comeback into international cricket started just before the tour to South Africa in 1992. And then after that close game that India lost in Chennai, that big tour, Pakistan coming to India, everybody's talking about it. And then India went to Delhi and Kumble took all 10 in the second innings. We were all in the commentary box. I think I got 2 of those. It told you another thing about Kumble, why he was such a captain's delight. Azharuddin would often say, when you have Kumble in your team, you only captain the side from one end. He'd say in Hyderabad, he said, ek and Kumble ko de ke chhod dena. He said, I always captained the side from one end when Kumble was at the side because he captained the other end himself.
He's always had this never say die attitude, and it doesn't matter what situation is, he would always believe that he can contribute and he would find ways of getting wickets. That something was a great example, was a great inspiration for all of us youngsters around at that time.
And then came 2003-04, a young Harbhajan Singh is back in form. Harbhajan gets injured, Kumble gets his opportunity again. And how did he grab that opportunity? 24 wickets in 3 games in Australia after they'd made fun of him in Australia in 99. He'd taken 5 for 450, if I remember. But they made fun of him there, saying he cannot get wickets. He took 24 and then he went to Pakistan. And we all remember that Multan test, don't we? When Sehwag hit 309. India enforced the follow-on after 126 overs had been bowled and you effectively had 3 bowlers left. But I'm sure they just looked at Kumble and Kumble would have said yes. He took 6 wickets in that innings and is almost remembered as a forgotten postscript to that Multan test behind Sehwag's performance. But you'll find in that period Kumble was winning you as many matches as anybody else. And after 2003-04, Kumble went to Australia again, 2007-08, but this time he's coming to the end of his career. He's captain, he's got far more responsibility on him. The series was full of rancor and that culminated in Sydney. It was a terrible test match simply because of the tempers that were on display. There were some very poor umpiring decisions, and there was a feeling that the world was conspiring against India. That can happen sometimes when you get a siege mentality. And then India went to Perth. In between, there was the hearing. And I remember talking to a few people around then, and they said Kumble, along with the sadly late Dr. M.V. Sridhar, were outstanding in those hearings for standing up for what India was saying. And then, of course, Kumble used the expression that that hurt the Australians the most, because the line was originally Australians. And he said, there are two teams out there, only one is playing in the spirit of the game. Well, not the exact words, but around then, which were the lines the great Bill Woodfull had used in Bodyline. That hurt Australia more than anything else. But the one thing I realized throughout that period when Kumble was in charge, and I was lucky to have had a ringside view of it all, was that Kumble was the captain that India should have had a little bit more of. And throughout that turbulent period, Kumble protected that Indian side. He stood up as the leader, much like Castrol Activons protect your bike engine, whether it's running or off. So Anil Kumble finished with 619 wickets, more wickets than anybody else except Kumble himself perhaps thought that he would get. What a career. I hope his great skills and I hope his commitment is not lost to Indian cricket in a generation that doesn't see it that way.